2019, Carmelo de Coimbra, Portugal. The elderly nun's hands trembled as she held the sealed envelope. For 14 years, it had remained hidden behind a loose stone in the convent wall, exactly where Sister Lucia had instructed before her death in 2005. The abbess had been told to open it only when the signs become unmistakable. And now, in 2019, she knew the time had come. Inside, the handwriting was shaky but deliberate. The first line made her blood run cold. "What I am about to write is the part they forbade me to reveal. May God forgive me, but the silence has become more dangerous than the truth. If you want to understand how this prophecy may involve your life and your future, subscribe now and stay with me until the very end of this video. Because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about Fatima. Sister Lucia dos Santos died at age 97, taking with her secrets that made popes weep. She was the last living witness to what happened on that impossible day in 1917, when 70 Jairan people watched the sun dance in the sky above a muddy field in Portugal. 3 shepherd children had seen the Virgin Mary 6 times. They were given 3 secrets. The world knows about the first 2. The third, that's where the story gets complicated. The official version was released in 2000. It described a vision of a bishop dressed in white, being killed by soldiers. The Vatican declared the prophecy fulfilled. It was about the attempted assassination of Pope John Paul II in 1981. Case closed. Mystery solved. Except Sister Lucia herself said otherwise. In letters to her spiritual director, Cardinal Carlo Caffarra, she wrote, "What was revealed is true but incomplete. There is another part, the part that explains why." She was ordered to remain silent. And she did. For 63 years until her death, Lucia kept that silence, but she also left clues, breadcrumbs scattered across decades, hidden in her correspondence, buried in convent archives, coded in her prayers. The envelope found in 2019 contained 4 handwritten pages. They were dated 1944, the same year she wrote down the 3rd secret for the first time. But these pages were different. They were addressed to no one, or perhaps they were addressed to us. Here's what nobody tells you about Sister Lucia. She wasn't just a visionary. She was a mystic who lived in constant communion with heaven. After Fatima, the Virgin Mary continued appearing to her, not publicly, but in the silence of her convent cell. In 1929, she received the final instruction about the consecration of Russia. In 1944, she was given a vision so terrifying that she fell gravely ill and nearly died while writing it down. That vision? It was never fully disclosed. What the Vatican released in 2000 was part A of the 3rd secret, the symbolic vision of persecution, but there was a part B, an explanation, in the Virgin's own words, of what the vision meant and when it would come to pass. Sister Lucia confirmed this in a 1982 interview with Father Agustin Fuentes. "Father, the Most Holy Virgin is very sad because no one has paid attention to her message. The good are being persecuted. Many bishops, priests, and religious are on the road to perdition, and with them they are taking many souls. The Virgin told me that the devil is in the process of engaging in a decisive battle against her. It is a final battle where one side will be victorious and the other will suffer defeat. From now on, we are either with God or with the devil. There is no middle ground." She was told to keep silent about the rest, but before she died, she made sure that silence wouldn't last forever. Now here's where it gets eerie. In those 4 pages discovered in 2019, Sister Lucia refers to a specific time frame. She doesn't use exact dates. The Virgin never does. Instead, she uses what the letter calls the count of generations. She writes, 3 generations will pass from the day the Son gave testimony. When the third generation reaches its fullness, the trial will begin. Not the end, but the threshold. Not destruction, but purification. The smoke will enter the sanctuary. Brothers will betray brothers. The faith will collapse in the lands that once held it highest. But those who remain, those who cling to the Rosary and the Immaculate Heart, will be the remnant that rebuilds. Let me break this down for you, because it's about to get very, very real. The miracle of the Son happened on October 13th, 1917. A biblical generation is often counted as 36 years. The span from birth to parenthood repeated. 3 generations would be 108 years. 2025 is exactly 108 years after 1917. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's what else Sister Lucia wrote in that letter. You will know the time has come when Peter's chair is shaken from within, when shepherds scatter the flock instead of gathering it, when the holy places are desecrated not by invaders, but by those who serve there. Let me ask you something. Have you been paying attention? In 2023, Pope Francis allowed blessings for same-sex couples, a move that fractured the Church. Cardinals publicly opposed him. African and Asian bishops openly defied Vatican directives. For the first time in modern history, the Catholic Church is experiencing a doctrinal civil war in real time, broadcast on social media for the whole world to see. But it's not just division, it's desecration from within. In 2024, reports emerged of financial scandals involving the Vatican Bank. Again. In Germany, entire dioceses have proposed synodal paths that contradict 2,000 years of teaching. In the United States, churches are closing at record rates. In Europe, once great cathedrals are being sold and turned into nightclubs, museums, or cultural centers. And then there's this. In January 2024, a statue of Our Lady of Fatima in Tomar, Portugal, was filmed weeping blood. Not tears, blood. Scientists examined it. No fraud was found. The local diocese opened an investigation and then silence. No conclusion, no explanation, just bureaucratic limbo. Are you starting to see the pattern? Sister Lucia wasn't predicting the end of the world. She was warning about the end of an age, the death of Christian civilization as we know it, a great unraveling, a sifting, what she called the separation of wheat from chaff. And here's the thing that should shake you to your core. She said it would happen gradually, so gradually that most people wouldn't even realize it was a prophecy being fulfilled. They'd just think it was. The times we live in. But there's something else in that letter, something the abbess didn't release to the public, something she shared only with a handful of church officials, and they've kept it buried ever since. Sister Lucia wrote about a sign, a physical, undeniable sign that would mark the beginning of the final stage of the prophecy. She described it as a light in the heavens, not of sun or moon, but of warning. On January 25, 1938, an aurora borealis unlike any in recorded history lit up the skies across Europe, visible as far south as North Africa. It was blood red. It pulsed. People thought it was fire, war, the end of the world. Sister Lucia saw it from her convent and immediately wrote to her bishop, "That is the sign. War is imminent." Months later, World War II began. Now she said there would be another sign. Not before a war, before the trial, the purification, and this time it wouldn't just be the sky, it would be the earth itself. Let me tell you what happened in 2024 that almost no one connected. A series of earthquakes struck central Italy, near Assisi, the birthplace of St. Francis. Simultaneously, a solar storm disrupted communications across Europe. And on the same week, the oldest known relic of the True Cross kept in Rome was reported stolen, not damaged, stolen. It has never been recovered. 3 events, 1 week, all in the heart of Christian Europe. Sister Lucia wrote, "When the heavens roar, the earth shakes, and the cross is taken from its place, know that the countdown has begun." Are we in that countdown? Here's what we know for certain. Sister Lucia's letter mentions that the trial would unfold in stages, not all at once. First, confusion in the church, then moral collapse in society, then wars and rumors of wars. And finally, and this is the part that will make your skin crawl, a moment of choice. She describes it as the Great Separation, a point where humanity will be forced to choose sides, not politically, not ideologically, but spiritually. You will either belong to the Immaculate Heart or to the serpent. There will be no neutral ground. Even those who wish to hide will be found. It's not about fear. It's about preparation. Because buried in that same letter, Sister Lucia gives instructions. Not vague spiritual platitudes, but concrete, practical steps for those who want to survive what's coming. Not physically, but spiritually. She calls them the coordinates of the remnant. And those coordinates, they involve specific prayers, specific devotions, and a specific place of refuge that isn't a location on a map. It's a state of soul. But before we get there, you need to understand why this prophecy was hidden in the first place. Why did the Vatican keep Part B locked away? Why did they silence Sister Lucia? Why, in the year 2000, did they release a version of the third secret that even she hinted was incomplete? Because what Sister Lucia saw wasn't just a warning. It was an indictment, not of the world, but of the Church itself. Vatican Secret Archives, 1960. Pope John XXIII sat alone in his private study, the sealed envelope before him. He had been warned by his predecessors never to open it before 1960, the year Sister Lucia said the contents would become clearer. His hands shook as he broke the seal. What he read made him go pale. He closed the envelope, locked it away, and never spoke of it publicly again. But those close to him said he was never the same afterward. He would wake at night trembling, whispering the same phrase, "It concerns the faith. The faith itself will be lost." Let me be very clear about something. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented history. When Sister Lucia wrote down the third secret in 1944, she sealed it with explicit instructions. It was to be opened in 1960, either by the Patriarch of Lisbon or the Bishop of Leiria Fatima. Why 1960? Because she said, by then it will seem clearer. She repeated this to multiple church officials. It's in the archives. It's in her correspondence. It's undeniable. But when 1960 came, the Vatican refused to open it. They issued a statement saying the secret would remain sealed indefinitely. The world was shocked. The faithful demanded answers. What could be so terrible that the Church itself was afraid to reveal it? Then came Pope John XXIII's decision. He read it privately and buried it again. Pope Paul VI read it in 1963. He wept. He also chose silence. Pope John Paul II read it in 1978, immediately after his election. Within 3 years he was shot in St. Peter's Square. He survived, attributed his survival to Our Lady of Fatima, and in 2000 he finally released. Part of it, the vision, the symbolic image, but not the words, not the explanation, not the why. And here's the question that should haunt you. If 3 popes read the full secret and all of them chose to hide it, what did they see that was worse than nuclear war, worse than communist persecution, worse than the assassination attempt itself? Sister Lucia gave us the answer, not in one letter, not in one statement, but scattered across decades, in fragments that only now, with hindsight, we can piece together. In 1957, she gave an interview to Father Fuentes that was so alarming, the Vatican forced her to retract it. But before the retraction, her words were published. Here's what she said. "The Virgin is very sad because no one pays attention to her message. The good are persecuted. Many priests and bishops are on the road to perdition and are taking many souls with them. There is a diabolical disorientation being spread in the world. The devil has succeeded in infiltrating evil even into the church. Father, the devil is in the mood for engaging in a decisive battle against the Virgin, and the devil knows what it is that offends God the most. The devil knows what will secure the greatest number of souls in the least amount of time, and that is the loss of faith. Loss of faith, not persecutions, not wars, not natural disasters. The loss of faith itself. Let me show you why this is not metaphor. This is measurable. This is happening right now. In 1917, when the miracle of the sun occurred, Europe was the beating heart of Christianity. Churches were full, seminaries were overflowing, Catholic nations dominated the continent. Faith was the bedrock of society. By 2024, here are the numbers. In France, 5% of Catholics attend Mass regularly. 5%. France, the eldest daughter of the Church, has more mosques under construction than Catholic churches. In Ireland, a nation that once sent missionaries to convert the world, Mass attendance has dropped to 2% among those under 35. 2%. In Germany, the church is hemorrhaging 500 Zuhören members per year, not through death, through formal renunciation. People are filling out paperwork to officially leave the faith. In Spain, 70% of young adults identify as non-religious. Spain, the land of Teresa of Avila, Ignatius of Loyola, Dominic, and Francis Xavier. In Belgium, the Netherlands, and Austria, once mighty dioceses are merging parishes because there aren't enough priests left to say Mass. This isn't a trend, this is a collapse. And here's the part that should terrify you. Sister Lucia said this would happen specifically in the lands that held the faith highest. Not Africa, not Asia, not Latin America, Europe, the very birthplace of Christian civilization. But it's not just the laity, it's the hierarchy itself. In 2019, the Amazon Synod brought pagan rituals into the Vatican. Yes, you read that right. Indigenous wooden idols, Pachamama figures, were placed in a Catholic church, honored in ceremonies and blessed by prelates. When a faithful Catholic threw them into the Tiber River in protest, he was condemned. The idols were retrieved, apologized for, and restored. In 2023, Pope Francis suggested that the Catholic Church might be too rigid in its doctrines and needed to evolve with the times. He allowed blessings for same-sex unions. He has questioned the existence of hell in informal conversations. He has suggested that non-Christians can be saved without faith in Christ. Whether you agree or disagree with these positions isn't the point. The point is this. For 2,000 years, the Catholic Church taught one thing. Now, in real time, you're watching it fracture into opposing camps. Cardinals publicly correcting the Pope, bishops defying Rome, entire national conferences going their own way. This is exactly what Sister Lucia said would happen. The disorientation, the confusion, the shepherds scattering the flock. But there's more. Let me show you something that will make your skin crawl. In that 2019 letter, Sister Lucia describes a vision she had in 1944, the same year she wrote The Third Secret. She saw a figure dressed in papal white, standing at an altar. But the altar was covered in dust and cobwebs, and the chalice was tipped over, spilling its contents onto the ground. Behind the figure, she saw shadows, human shadows, whispering and mocking. She wrote, "I asked the lady who they were. She said, 'Those are the ones who have entered his house dressed as friends.' Then the Virgin said something that Sister Lucia circled 3 times in her notes, underlined twice, and wrote in all capital letters, 'The greatest crisis the Church will face will not come from outside, but from within.' Do you understand what that means? Not persecutors, not atheists, not governments. The crisis comes from inside, from bishops, from cardinals, from theologians, from those who wear the collar and claim to serve, but who have lost the faith themselves. And it's not hidden, it's public, it's documented. Let me give you names and dates, because this isn't speculation, this is record. Cardinal Caspar of Germany has openly questioned church teaching on marriage and morality. Cardinal Marx of Munich called for a new church that rethinks traditional teachings. Bishop Betzing, head of the German Bishops' Conference, has pushed for blessings of homosexual unions, women priests, and optional celibacy. In the United States, Father James Martin, S.J.D., has built a media empire promoting LGBTQ+ inclusion in ways that directly contradict catechism teachings, and he's been promoted, honored, and invited to the Vatican multiple times. These aren't fringe figures. These are men in positions of power, shaping policy, influencing millions, and the laity, many have stopped caring altogether. They've left. Or worse, they've stayed, but they no longer believe. Sister Lucia warned that this would be the most dangerous time in church history because the enemy wouldn't come with armies or laws. He would come with ambiguity, with confusion, with questions that sound reasonable but lead to darkness. Is it really a sin if it's done with love? Didn't Jesus say not to judge? Isn't the church just adapting to modern realities? These questions sound compassionate, but Sister Lucia said they were the voice of the serpent, dressed in the language of mercy. She wrote, "The devil's final deception will not be cruelty, it will be false compassion. He will make sin look like love, rebellion look like freedom, and the destruction of the faith look like progress." Look around, is that not exactly what's happening? But here's what the skeptics will say. This is just cultural change. Every generation thinks the next one has lost its way. This is nothing new. Fair point. Except Sister Lucia didn't just predict decline. She predicted specific events, and those events have come true with terrifying accuracy. She said Russia would spread its errors throughout the world if it was not consecrated to the Immaculate Heart. In 1929, she received a vision confirming this. The consecration didn't happen as requested. What followed? The rise of Soviet communism, Mao's China, the Khmer Rouge, the Cuban Revolution, the spread of Marxist ideology into universities, media, and governments worldwide. Over 100 million dead, the Cold War, the nuclear threat, all of it traceable to the ignored warning. She said the church would suffer a great trial. In 1960, nothing seemed wrong. The church was thriving. Vatican II was about to open with optimism, but by 1968, Pope Paul VI himself said, "The smoke of Satan has entered the church." Mass attendance began its freefall. Seminaries emptied. Liturgical abuses exploded. Doctrine was questioned. The prophecy was unfolding. She said there would be wars and revolutions. World War II began exactly as she predicted after the aurora of 1938. But she also said there would be more, and there have been. Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East, Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine. Over a century of continuous warfare, exactly as she described. And now, in 2025, we arrive at the final stage she mentioned. The last part of her prophecy, the part she was most afraid to speak, concerns not just the church, but the individual soul. She wrote, "A time will come when each person will be forced to choose, not by law, not by force, but by circumstance. The world will become so dark, the confusion so great, that only those anchored in the Immaculate Heart will be able to see clearly. All others will be swept away, not by violence, but by their own blindness." What does that mean practically? Sister Lucia said that during this time, the rosary would become the only weapon that works. Not metaphorically. She insisted on this point over and over, in every interview, every letter, every conversation. Pray the rosary daily. It is the only thing that will save you. Why? What power does a string of beads and repeated prayers have? She explained it this way. The rosary is the chain that binds the devil. He cannot break it. He can tempt, deceive, confuse, and terrify, but he cannot touch the soul that prays the rosary with faith. In 1917 at Fatima, the Virgin said, "In the end, my immaculate heart will triumph. Not might, not could, will." But she also said, "Many souls will be lost. Not all, not none. Many." The implication is clear. There will be a division, a separation, a great sifting. Sister Lucia's final letters describe this as the era of the remnant, a small, faithful group who hold the line while the world falls apart, not hiding in caves, not retreating from the world, but living ordinary lives with extraordinary faith, holding on to truth when everything around them is lies. She said, "You will recognize them not by signs or wonders, but by their peace. In the midst of chaos, they will have an inexplicable peace, because they will know that God is still in control." And here's the twist that no one saw coming. In that 2019 letter, Sister Lucia mentions a date, not directly, and she never does, but through a reference that scholars have only recently decoded. She writes, "When the great sign appears in the heavens, when the shepherds have scattered, when the faith has grown cold in the lands of its birth, then look to the place where the sun danced. There the final battle will begin, not with swords, but with prayer, not with armies, but with souls." She's talking about Fatima itself, and this is where it gets eerie. In 2017, on the 100th anniversary of the apparitions, over 1 million people descended on Fatima. Pope Francis was there. It was meant to be a celebration. But something else happened. During the papal mass, a massive storm erupted out of nowhere without warning. Wind tore through the crowd. Rain lashed the altar. Lightning struck close enough to make people scream. And in the middle of it all, a bolt of lightning hit the sanctuary of Fatima itself, scorching the wall near the chapel of the apparitions. The media barely covered it. The Vatican issued no comment, but those who were there said the same thing. It felt like a warning. Sister Lucia had written, "Heaven's patience has limits. When those limits are reached, the sky itself will testify." Was that the testimony? Or is something even greater still to come? Akita, Japan, October 13th, 1973. Sister Agnes Sasagawa knelt before a wooden statue of the Virgin Mary, praying her rosary in the convent chapel. Suddenly, a brilliant light flooded the room. The statue began to glow, and then, impossibly, it spoke. The voice was gentle but carried the weight of eternity. "My dear daughter, listen well to what I have to say to you. As I told you, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, such as one will never have seen before. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity. The only arms which will remain for you will be the rosary and the sign left by my Son." The date of this final message, October 13th, the exact same date as the miracle of the sun at Fatima 56 years earlier. Coincidence? Let me show you why it's not. What Sister Lucia saw in Portugal in 1917, Sister Agnes heard in Japan in 1973. But they weren't the only ones. Across the 20th century, a pattern emerged, a pattern so precise, so consistent that it can no longer be dismissed as religious hysteria or pious imagination. The Virgin Mary has been appearing all over the world, in different cultures, to different people, speaking different languages, but delivering the exact same message. And that message is accelerating toward a single point in time, now. Let me walk you through the evidence, piece by piece, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Fatima, Portugal, 1917, 3 shepherd children, 6 apparitions, a miracle witnessed by 70,000 people. The Virgin warns of war, apostasy, the persecution of the Church, and the spread of Russia's errors. She promises that in the end, her immaculate heart will triumph, but only after great suffering. She insists on daily rosary, penance, and consecration of Russia. Bravery, Belgium, 1932. 5 children see the Virgin 33 times. She calls herself the Immaculate Virgin and warns that humanity is on the brink of disaster. She asks for prayer and conversion, saying, "Pray always, I will convert sinners." She specifically warns about the coming war, just 7 years before World War II begins. Banneux, Belgium, 1933. A poor girl named Mariette sees the Virgin 8 times. The lady identifies herself as the Virgin of the Poor and promises to intercede for the sick and suffering. She establishes a spring of healing water and repeatedly says, "I come to relieve suffering." But she also warns, "Believe in me, I will believe in you." A condition, an if-then statement, not automatic salvation, a call to active faith. Amsterdam, Netherlands, 1945 to 1959. A woman named Ida Peerdeman receives 56 visions of the Virgin, who calls herself the Lady of all Nations. And she warns of apostasy, confusion in the Church, and a coming time when Satan will be given a free hand. She specifically says that a great battle is coming, not of weapons, but of ideologies, and that the Church will be attacked from within. She asks for a new prayer to be spread worldwide, and a new Marian dogma to be declared, Mary as co-redemptrix, mediatrix, and advocate. Akita, Japan, 1973 to 1981. Sister Agnes Sasagawa receives messages from a wooden statue that weeps real human tears, verified by science. Over 101 times the statue weeps. The Virgin warns of fire falling from the sky, a punishment worse than the flood, and the necessity of the rosary. She says bishops will oppose bishops, cardinals will oppose cardinals, and Satan will infiltrate even the highest ranks of the Church. The Bishop of Akita investigates. Miracles are documented. In 1984, Cardinal Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI, rules the messages as worthy of belief and essentially the same as Fatima. Kibeho, Rwanda, 1981-1989. 3 teenage girls see the Virgin in a small village. She calls herself Mother of the Word and warns of a coming genocide in Rwanda if the people do not repent. She shows the girls visions of rivers of blood, piles of corpses, and mass slaughter. The girls are mocked, the visions are dismissed. Then, in 1994, the Rwandan genocide occurs exactly as described. Nearly 1 million people are killed in 100 days. The Church investigates. In 2001, the Vatican officially recognizes Kibeho as authentic. Do you see the pattern yet? Every single one of these apparitions warns of the same things: apostasy and loss of faith, division and confusion in the Church, a great chastisement or trial, the necessity of the rosary and penance, a promised triumph at the end. But here's where it gets chilling. Sister Lucia herself confirmed that these apparitions were connected. In a 1957 letter to a priest, she wrote, "The Virgin has been appearing in many places because the message is urgent. She is not saying different things. She is repeating the same message louder and louder because no one is listening." She compared it to a mother calling a child who is running toward danger. The first call is calm, the second is louder, the third is a shout, the fourth is a scream. And when the child still doesn't stop, the mother runs after them. That's what the Blessed Virgin is doing. She's running after humanity, and in 2025 she's out of breath. Now let me show you how these apparitions converge with current events in ways that should make your blood run cold. Sister Lucia said the trial would begin when 3 generations have passed since the miracle of the sun. We've already established that 2025 marks exactly 108 years, three 36-year generations. But there's more. In Akita, the Virgin said the chastisement would come when bishops oppose bishops and cardinals oppose cardinals. Let me give you the receipts. 2023. Cardinal Raymond Burke publicly accuses Pope Francis of sowing confusion and leading souls into error. He is subsequently removed from his Vatican apartment and stripped of his salary, a humiliation unprecedented in modern church history. 2024. The African bishops issue a statement rejecting the Vatican's allowance of blessings for same-sex couples, calling it contrary to scripture and tradition. The German bishops double down in the opposite direction, calling for full acceptance and sacramental inclusion of LGBTQ+ relationships. Two completely opposite positions, same church, same time. January 2025, Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, is removed from his diocese by papal decree after refusing to remain silent on doctrinal issues. He calls it a purge of faithful bishops. Dozens of priests and lay people rally to his defense, calling it an abuse of power. The church is fracturing in real time. This is not political commentary. This is fulfillment of prophecy, word for word, event for event. But it's not just the church. Let's talk about the world. At Fatima, the Virgin warned of wars and the spread of Russia's errors. At Akita, she warned of fire falling from the sky. At Kibeho, she warned of rivers of blood. Let's look at 2024 and early 2025. October 7th, 2023. Hamas invades Israel, triggering the most brutal conflict in the region in decades. Thousands are killed. Hostages are taken. The violence spreads to Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. Iran threatens direct involvement. The world teeters on the edge of a regional war that could ignite World War III. February 2024. Russia intensifies its war in Ukraine. Casualties exceed 1 million. Nuclear rhetoric escalates. Putin openly threatens NATO countries. The doomsday clock is moved to 90 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been. June 2024. China conducts massive military drills around Taiwan, simulating an invasion. The US responds by deploying additional aircraft carriers to the Pacific. Analysts warn that a conflict over Taiwan could begin within months. August 2024. Wildfires of unprecedented scale devastate Greece, Canada, and California simultaneously. Entire towns are erased, thousands are displaced. Climate scientists say the fires are beyond any modeling predictions. December 2024. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake strikes Turkey, killing over 15,000 people. It's the third massive quake in that region in 2 years. Seismologists have no explanation for the clustering. Wars, fires, earthquakes. Famines in East Africa, floods in South Asia, exactly as the prophecies described. And here's the part that should make you sit up straight. Sister Lucia said these events wouldn't happen randomly. They would converge, pile on top of each other, accelerate, not to destroy the world, but to force humanity to pay attention. She called it the birth pangs. Not the birth itself, the contractions before it, pain that increases in frequency and intensity until something new is born. What's being born? She said, a new era, a time of peace, but only after the old world has been purified. Now here's where the message gets personal. In every single one of these apparitions, Fatima, Akita, Amsterdam, Kibeho, the Virgin doesn't just warn. She gives instructions, not vague, not symbolic, concrete, practical, actionable, and the instructions are always the same. 1. Pray the rosary every day, not when you feel like it, not when it's convenient, every single day. She said the rosary is the weapon that will defeat Satan in this battle, not metaphorically, literally. She told Sister Lucia, "There is no problem, no matter how difficult, that cannot be solved by praying the rosary." 2. Make sacrifices and do penance. This one makes modern people uncomfortable. Sacrifice in 2025? What does that even mean? Sister Lucia explained it simply. Offer up your daily sufferings, your frustrations, your pain, your inconveniences, for the conversion of sinners. Don't waste your suffering. Use it. 3. Consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This isn't just a prayer, it's a total surrender. It means saying to God, "I belong to you, completely. Use me as you will." Sister Lucia said that souls who are consecrated to the Immaculate Heart will be protected during the trial, not necessarily from physical harm, but from spiritual destruction. They will not lose their faith, no matter what happens around them. 4. Wear the brown scapular. This sounds medieval, I know, but the Virgin promised at Fatima, "Whoever dies wearing this scapular will not suffer eternal fire." Sister Lucia wore hers until the day she died. Pope John Paul II wore his under his papal robes. It's not magic, it's a sign, a visible commitment to Our Lady's protection. 5. Make the 5 first Saturdays devotion. On the first Saturday of 5 consecutive months, go to confession, receive communion, pray the rosary, and meditate on the mysteries for 15 minutes, all with the intention of making reparation to the Immaculate Heart. Sister Lucia said the Virgin promised, "I will assist at the hour of death with all the graces necessary for salvation anyone who does this." These aren't suggestions, these are battle orders. Because that's what this is, a battle, not with guns, not with politics, a spiritual battle for souls, and the stakes couldn't be higher. At Akita, the Virgin said, "The work of the devil will infiltrate even into the church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals, bishops against bishops. Priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres. Churches and altars will be sacked. The church will be full of those who accept compromises, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord." Look around. Is that not happening right now? But then she said something that changes everything. The demon will be especially implacable against souls consecrated to God. The thought of the loss of so many souls is the cause of my sadness. If sins increase in number and gravity, there will be no longer pardon for them. No longer pardon. Let that sink in, not because God stops being merciful, but because humanity stops asking for mercy, because people stop believing they need it. Because sin becomes normalized, celebrated, defended, and repentance becomes impossible. Sister Lucia said, "This is the devil's endgame. Not to make people commit sins, but to make them believe sin doesn't exist. To erase the very concept of right and wrong. To replace objective truth with subjective feelings. To make everyone their own God." Sound familiar? If this is making your heart race, if you feel a knot forming in your stomach, subscribe now. Because what I'm about to show you in the final chapter will connect all of this to a specific timeline, a specific event, and a specific choice you're going to have to make sooner than you think. Let me show you one more thing before we move forward. In 2017, a strange phenomenon began occurring in multiple locations around the world. Statues of the Virgin Mary in Portugal, Poland, Argentina, and New Mexico began weeping. Not all at once, but over the course of months, one after another, confirmed by witnesses, photographed, investigated. In Tamar, Portugal, the statue wept blood, actual blood. DNA analysis confirmed it was human. Type AB, the same blood type found on the Shroud of Turin and in Eucharistic miracles. The local diocese opened an investigation. No fraud was found. No natural explanation was discovered. And then, quietly, the investigation was closed without conclusion. No official statement, no declaration, just silence. Why? because officially recognizing these signs would mean officially recognizing that something is happening, something the church hierarchy isn't ready to face. But Sister Lucia predicted this too. She said, "The signs will be ignored by those who should proclaim them. The shepherds will be silent while the sheep wander into darkness, and that is when the faithful must speak." The faithful, not the clergy, not the bishops, not the Vatican, you, me. Ordinary people who still believe. Because in the end, Sister Lucia's prophecy isn't about popes and councils and global events. It's about individual souls, your soul, my soul. She said, "In the final trial, each person will stand alone before God. You will not be able to hide behind your pastor, your bishop, or even the pope. You will be asked, did you remain faithful? Did you pray? Did you resist? Did you hold the line when everything around you collapsed?" And your answer to that question will determine everything. Coimbra, Portugal, February 13th, 2005. Sister Lucia dos Santos took her final breath at 5:25 p.m., exactly as the sun was setting over the convent walls. She was 97 years old. She had lived through 2 world wars, the rise and fall of communism, the attempted assassination of a pope, and the transformation or deformation of the church she loved. In her final hours, she was heard whispering the same prayer over and over: "Jesus, Mary, Joseph, save souls." The nuns who attended her said something strange happened at the moment of her death. The room filled with the scent of roses. Overwhelming, intoxicating, even though there were no flowers present. One nun claimed she saw a flash of light near the window. Another said she felt an inexplicable peace wash over her, as if something ancient and heavy had been lifted. Sister Lucia was gone, but her final secret remained. Hidden in that envelope discovered in 2019 was not just a warning, it was a map. Not a physical map with coordinates you could plug into Google, a spiritual map, a set of instructions for navigating what she called the storm of confusion that would engulf the world in the final stage of the prophecy. And buried in those instructions was something the world has never heard before, the answer to why the prophecy was hidden in the first place. Let me show you what the Vatican didn't want you to know. When Pope John XXIII read the third secret in 1960, he reportedly said to his closest advisors, "This does not concern my pontificate." Translation, it wasn't about his time, it was about later, much later. Pope Paul VI read it and made a cryptic statement in 1972. "The smoke of Satan has entered the church." But he never explained what he meant. He never connected it publicly to Fatima. He just left that ominous phrase hanging in the air. Pope John Paul II read it and was shot 3 years later. He survived and attributed his survival to Our Lady of Fatima. But when he finally released the third secret in 2000, he released only the vision, the symbolic image of a pope being killed. He didn't release the explanation. He didn't release the Virgin's words interpreting the vision. Why? Because according to Sister Lucia's letter, the explanation wasn't just about persecution from outside. It was about betrayal from within. And not betrayal by obvious enemies, but by those who thought they were reforming the church, modernizing it, making it relevant. Sister Lucia wrote, "The lady told me that the greatest danger to souls would not come from those who hate the faith, but from those who think they are improving it. They will change the Mass, abandon tradition, embrace the spirit of the world and call it mercy. They will silence the truth and call it charity. They will celebrate sin and call it inclusion. And many souls will be lost because they will follow shepherds who have themselves lost the way." This is why the Vatican buried it, because it was an indictment, not of atheists, not of communists, not of persecutors, but of the Church's own leadership. And now, in 2025, we're watching it happen in real time. But here's the part that will shake you. Sister Lucia didn't just predict the crisis. She gave the solution. And the solution wasn't institutional. It wasn't a new council, a new dogma, a new papal decree. The solution was personal, individual, intimate. She called it the refuge of the Immaculate Heart. Let me explain what that means, because this is the key to everything. In her final writings, Sister Lucia describes the Immaculate Heart of Mary not as a metaphor, not as a poetic image, but as an actual spiritual location, a place of safety in the storm. She wrote, "When the confusion becomes unbearable, when you don't know who to trust, when priests contradict priests and bishops contradict bishops, when even the Holy Father seems to speak in riddles, you must flee to the Immaculate Heart. Not physically, you cannot board a plane and fly there, but spiritually. Through consecration, through the rosary, through trust. The Immaculate Heart is the fortress that cannot be breached. The devil has no power there. None." This wasn't metaphor to her. She insisted on it, over and over, in letters, in interviews, in conversations with her confessor. She said, "I cannot emphasize this enough. If you do nothing else, and consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart, it is the only guaranteed refuge." But here's where it gets even deeper. In that hidden letter, Sister Lucia describes something she called the 3 marks of the remnant. These are the signs by which you will recognize those who survive the trial spiritually intact, not those who survive physically. Physical survival is irrelevant. But those who emerge on the other side with their faith, their souls, and their sanity. Mark 1. They pray the rosary daily, without exception. Sister Lucia said the rosary is not just a devotion. It's a weapon, it's armor, it's spiritual oxygen. She wrote, "In the days of darkness, those who do not pray the rosary will suffocate spiritually. They will gasp for truth and find only lies. They will search for light and find only fog, but those who pray the rosary will breathe clearly, see clearly, think clearly." The rosary is the oxygen mask in a room full of poison gas. Think about that image. Poison gas, invisible, deadly. You don't know it's there until you can't breathe. That's what she said the confusion would be like. Invisible lies that seem like truth. Invisible poison that seems like mercy, and the only way to survive is to have your oxygen mask on before the gas is released. Mark 2. They remain obedient to tradition, even when it's mocked, even when it's forbidden. This one is controversial, I know, but Sister Lucia was clear. She said, "There will come a time when the ancient practices, the Latin Mass, Eucharistic adoration, fasting, confession, devotion to the saints will be ridiculed as outdated, oppressive, irrelevant. Those who cling to them will be called rigid, fundamentalist, divisive. But these are the practices that connect us to 2,000 years of unbroken faith. To abandon them is to cut the anchor rope in a hurricane. The ship will drift. The ship will capsize." In 2025, this is happening. Pope Francis has famously criticized those who prefer the traditional Latin Mass, calling them rigid and accusing them of turning their backs on Vatican II. Restrictions have been placed on the old rite. Priests who celebrate it are investigated. Communities who practice it are marginalized. Is this the persecution Sister Lucia warned about? Not persecution by secularists, but by the Church itself against its own faithful. She wrote, "When tradition is attacked from within, that is the sign. Hold fast, do not compromise, not 1 inch, because once you compromise on the sacred, there is no bottom to the fall." Mark 3. They will have an inexplicable peace in the midst of chaos. This is the strangest mark and the most important, Sister Lucia said. You will recognize the remnant not by what they do, but by what they radiate. In the darkest days, when even good people are panicking, despairing, raging, losing their minds, the remnant will have peace. not because they are naive, not because they are ignorant, but because they know how the story ends. She continued, they have read the last page. They know the Immaculate Heart triumphs. They know the Church survives. They know Christ wins. And so they do not despair. They work, they pray, they suffer. But they do not despair. This peace, she said, will be supernatural. It won't make logical sense. People will look at those who have it and think they're crazy. How can you be calm when the world is ending? But they're not calm because they're stupid. They're calm because they're anchored. Now let me show you why this matters right now, in 2025. In the letter from 2019, Sister Lucia references a specific timeline. She doesn't use dates. She never does. But she uses a phrase that scholars have been trying to decode for years. She writes, when the shepherd strikes the rock and the waters divide, that is when the separation begins. Some will cross, some will turn back, and the crossing will take 3 years. 3 years, a separation, a crossing. What does that mean? Some analysts believe it refers to a schism, an actual formal split in the Catholic Church, not just doctrinal disagreements, but a full fracture, 2 sides, 2 paths, one claiming to be the true church, the other claiming the same. And the faithful will be forced to choose. Does that sound impossible? It shouldn't. It's already happening informally. You have progressive Catholics who want married priests, women deacons, acceptance of LGBTQ+ relationships, and a complete reimagining of church teaching. And you have traditional Catholics who insist on unchanging doctrine, ancient liturgy, and strict adherence to the magisterium. These 2 groups no longer speak the same language. They don't even recognize each other as practicing the same faith. A formal schism would just make official what's already true on the ground. And if it happens, Sister Lucia said it would last 3 years, 3 years of division, confusion, and trial. And then, at the end, one side would collapse and the other would emerge purified, smaller but stronger. She compared it to the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. The waters parted. They had to choose, cross or go back to Egypt. Those who crossed were saved. Those who went back perished. She said, the same choice is coming, not between nations, not between political parties, but between obedience to God and obedience to the world. And many, many will choose the world, even while calling themselves Christian. Let me show you why 2025 might be the beginning of that 3-year crossing. In October 2024, the Vatican announced the final session of the Synod on Synodality, scheduled for October 2025. This is the culmination of a multi-year process that has been described as either the most important reform since Vatican II or the greatest threat to Catholic doctrine in history, depending on who you ask. The topics on the table: decentralizing papal authority, allowing national bishops' conferences to make their own doctrinal decisions, expanding the role of women in ministry, re-examining church teaching on sexuality, basically everything Sister Lucia warned about. And here's the kicker. Pope Francis has repeatedly said this synod will result in concrete changes, not just discussions, changes to structure, to practice, possibly to doctrine itself. If those changes are approved in October 2025, and if they contradict 2,000 years of church teaching, what happens next? Obey the Pope and abandon tradition, or hold to tradition and disobey the Pope? That's not a hypothetical question anymore. That's a real dilemma that millions of Catholics could face within the next year. And Sister Lucia said, when that moment comes, do not rely on your own wisdom. Do not follow the crowd. Do not even follow those who seem intelligent or holy. There is only one safe path. Consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart and ask her to lead you. She will, she promised, but you must ask. Now let me show you the final piece of the puzzle, the part that makes everything click into place. In the hidden letter, Sister Lucia reveals why the Virgin appeared at Fatima in 1917 specifically. Why Portugal? Why 3 shepherd children? Why that moment in history? She writes, "The lady told me that Fatima was chosen because Portugal would be the last stronghold. When all of Europe has fallen into apostasy, when churches are empty and faith is dead, Portugal will remain. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but the flame will not go out there, and from that flame, the renewal will begin." This was confirmed in a bizarre way. In 1931, Jesus appeared to Sister Lucia in a private vision and told her, "Make it known to my ministers that given they follow the example of the King of France in delaying the execution of my command, they will follow him into misfortune." What command? The consecration of Russia. And what misfortune? The King of France ignored requests to consecrate France to the Sacred Heart. Decades later, the French Revolution decapitated the monarchy and plunged the nation into chaos. Jesus was saying, if you ignore this, the church will suffer the same fate. And it has. But he also said something else. He said, it is never too late to have recourse to Jesus and Mary. Never too late, even now, even in 2025, at the edge of the precipice, it's not too late. Sister Lucia's final message, the core of everything she wanted us to know, is this. This is not the end. This is the threshold. The birth pangs before the birth. The darkness before the dawn. She wrote, "Do not be afraid. I know the Virgin's promise. I have seen what comes after. Yes, there will be suffering. Yes, there will be confusion. Yes, many will fall away, but the church will survive. Smaller, yes. Humbled, yes. Purified, yes, but alive. And those who remain will rebuild, not with money or politics or programs, but with faith. Simple, radical, total faith." And here's the final twist, the last line of her letter, the sentence she underlined 3 times. "The triumph has already begun. You are living in it. You just don't see it yet." What does that mean? It means the victory isn't in the future. It's happening now. Right now, in every soul that prays the rosary, in every person who goes to confession, in every act of sacrifice, every moment of purity, every choice to love God above all else. The triumph isn't a single event, it's a process, a purification, a transformation, and we are in it, Sister Lucia said. By the time the world realizes what has happened, it will already be over. The remnant will have crossed, the waters will have closed, and a new era will have begun. So here's the question you have to answer. Are you crossing? Because the water is parting right now in 2025. The choice is in front of you. Will you consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart? Will you pray the Rosary daily? Will you cling to tradition even when it costs you? Will you stand firm even when you stand alone? Or will you compromise? Will you drift? Will you follow the crowd into the fog? Sister Lucia said it this way, there are only 2 teams now, Mary's team and Satan's team. Everyone is on one or the other. There is no middle ground. Even neutrality is a choice, and it's the wrong one. But this isn't about fear. This is about clarity. You now know what Sister Lucia knew. You now see what the Pope saw and chose to hide. You now understand why the prophecy was sealed and why it's being revealed now, because we're out of time. The clock has run out. The birth pangs are here. The crossing has begun. And the most important question you will ever answer is this. Which side of the water will you be on when it closes? If this video shook you, if something in your heart is screaming that this is real, that this matters, that this is for you, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone you love. Someone who needs to hear it, someone who's drifting, someone who's confused, someone who's forgotten that God is still in control. And most importantly, consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart. Tonight, right now. Don't wait, don't overthink it. Just kneel down, pick up your rosary and say, Mary, I am yours. Protect me, guide me, use me. I trust you completely. That's it, that's the refuge. That's the coordinates. That's the answer Sister Lucia died trying to give us. The storm is here, but the ark is still open. Get in.